What does a vegetarian eat? In the summer, gazpacho. I make it about once a week. What do you need for gazpacho? Cucumbers, tomatoes. It's May here in New Jersey, and the backyard tomatoes aren't ready yet. These, I don't know where they came from, but they look pretty good. They look at least red. They came from the store, but it's much better to use them from your own backyard or the local farm stand. Much, much better. Peppers, I use green peppers. You can use red peppers, peppers of any color, sweet peppers, green onions, pepper, salt, some sort of hot chili. I use jalapeno, whatever you happen to be growing in your backyard. It's not too incredibly hot. I add veggie juice, tomato juice, if you like your gazpacho soupier, garlic, basil from the backyard, limes, olive oil, apple cider vinegar, food processor, a really big bowl, spoon, spatula. First thing, cucumbers. Probably the basic element of this cold soup. Using two, cut the ends off. Some people peel it. I usually don't. If you like that flavor, if you trust the grower to know what's on the outside, then I take a spoon. I do take the seeds out. Some people leave the seeds in. They get to be rather seedy. I just scrape them out, and they come out in a little trough. You can eat them, but they're a little watery, and probably not the nicest texture in a cold summer soup. Compost. And I slice them a couple of inches just so that they can go in. You might have to do more than one batch. I grind them pretty fine, especially if I leave the peel on. Nobody wants a big hunk of peel. Probably the reason some people peel them. Once they're chopped up pretty fine, pretty soupy, time for the big bowl. Let's dump them out. The cucumbers form most of the bulk of this soup. Peppers. Sweet green bell peppers. I take the seeds and the membrane out, and the stem. Just like the cucumbers, chop them up a little. Otherwise they don't do very well in the food processor if they're in too big a chunk. And then, just like the cucumbers, I grind them fairly fine. You want to knock it down so that the big chunks get down into the blade. You can leave it as chunky as you want. Depends on how big a chunks you want to have on the spoon. Looks like this gazpacho is going to be pretty green. We'll redden it up in a bit. Tomatoes. Right off the vine. Just like the cucumbers, slice them into not too big of chunks. Some people seed them. Maybe they're seed-phobic. I leave the seeds in. Tomato seeds are pretty soft. Some people think they're bitter. Now this you might need to do in more than one batch. Otherwise the juice comes out over the top and spills out. Much better than tomato juice. So tomato juice is usually cooked. Has none of the enzymes. Loses a lot of flavor, and then they have to add a lot of salt to processed tomato juice, and it's just not the same. Even better if they're still warm from the garden. Batch number 2. It's kind of pink. Mostly the air makes it pink. Starting to redden up. Hope I got a big enough bowl. Tomatoes. Now in this last round, I do all the intense flavored things. Green onions. Some people put red onions, some people put white onion. White onions tend to be oniony. Cut off the bottoms. This white part too, you can use as much of the white part as you want that onion flavor. Again, chop them into about an inch long pieces. They blend better. So the onion goes in. And these last items you want in the smallest bit because you want these flavors to permeate throughout the entire gazpacho mix rather than take a spoonful and get a big chunk of a hot pepper. I'd rather have the flavor of all these intense things spread throughout. Green onion. I'm using 3 jalapenos. Cut off the tops. Slice them in half. And cut out the membrane and seed portion. You might want to wear gloves if you have sensitive skin. Oops. And then be careful what you touch after you've handled hot peppers. Wash the hands. Fresh basil. You could use thyme, whatever you happen to be growing at the time. I'm using 2 cloves of garlic. You don't have to use garlic at all. It's all about flavor. What you find flavorful. How pungent you want your gazpacho. How spicy you want your gazpacho. Chop up the garlic a little. Again, to mix it throughout the whole thing. The juice of 2 limes. You can use lemons, you can use just the vinegar, it gets a little vinegary. Limes make it a little limey. Citrus reamer. I like to use limes because they don't have seeds. I don't have to go through that extra step of removing the seeds if I use lemons. Of course, if you watched the Baba Ganoush video, we did a trick of how to get the juice out of the limes and remove the seeds easily. Lemons. Did I say limes? It's all about flavor. If you like lime flavor, if you don't, if you like lemon, something acidic, definitely acidic, slightly. Ground black pepper. Of course, your guests can add this at the last minute into their own bowl to their own taste. Sea salt. Let's mix that in a little. Olive oil to lubricate. Apple cider vinegar. Just a little. With this, you want to make sure you get all those big chunks down into the blade and really grind this batch up. Almost to a liquid. Add more olive oil as it gets thick. Don't want to miss any. Looks like pesto. So since this is the last batch in the food processor, make sure everything gets off the blade. Refrain from licking the blade. That would not be a good idea. I think my mother taught me this. Making cookies and cake. Never leave anything in the mixing bowl. And take your spatula or your spoon and you want to mix everything. I refrain from tasting it at this point. It would be a little like a freshly opened bottle of wine. Gotta let it breathe. So make sure it gets mixed in together. Then let it sit. An hour, half hour. I wouldn't make this and serve it right away. After you've let it sit and breathe for a while, look at the color. That looks good to me. Some people like it a little redder, so that's when I take juice. Some people use pure tomato juice. I use a mixed vegetable juice that's red. And then add it and stir it until it's as red as you find appetizing. And as loose. Some people like a really, really thick, chunky gazpacho. Some people like it pretty much liquid. I like it always. Depending on how many tomatoes you put in, fresh tomatoes, you might not need this step at all. Now that's starting to look red. Some people make just the tomatoes and cucumbers and add the other stuff separately. Put it in bowls. The hot peppers, the basil, chop it up, and then people add it on top to their own taste and just use the red liquidy base to serve. Then, after you've let it mix and breathe and it looks the way you want it, comes the taste. Tastes like summer in a bowl. It's hot enough. I might add a little bit more salt. I was very conservative on the salt. Tastes just like summer.